So I'd like to just share the backgrounds of Brian and myself, how we got our start in sports, what that looked like, and then also go to some tips and tools that might help you get a foot in the door if you are looking to get into this field. And then I'd also like to have Brian talk about his resource and the resource that he works in, and talk about how it could help out students and what it would look like for you if you wanted to use it. So with all that being said, I'm just going to dive into to my background. After I share my story, then I'll have Brian share his, and we'll just keep on moving. But I'm currently a career coach in the College of Arts and Sciences Center for Career and Professional Success. I started in this role just a few months ago, but I've been at Ohio State for 5 years now in a couple of different capacities. Before I got here, I did work in sports, and I worked for 2 minor league hockey teams. They play in the ECHL, which is like the 3rd tier of pro hockey in the U.S. My first job out of my undergrad, I worked for the Johnstown Chiefs, which is a very old school, kind of rundown steel town in Pennsylvania. Maybe about an hour and 15 minutes east of Pittsburgh. And there, I started off as an account executive. And when I started my role, basically my task was to do sales, marketing, and advertising. Basically, if it was bolted down, you were trying to sell it. Whether it was some sort of promotional items, banners around the arena, anything that I could sell. What we call dasher boards. If you look at a hockey rink, all the advertisements around the ice, we would sell those to different companies. But on top of that, we were also selling tickets. We sold tickets to all the games. We sold season ticket packages. We sold things called flex plans, where they were maybe 10 games at a time. But in this arena in particular, we could also sell any other events that were coming in. So the circus, concerts, monster trucks, like anything that we possibly could sell, we were selling. So working in sports, my first time around, it was a little bit of a learning experience because I didn't necessarily expect to do a lot of sales. But as you become an account executive, you learn that you sell everything. And so that was my start. Had a good first year doing that, had a lot of fun. The people that you work with in your office, it's just such a fun environment. You typically are there because you really enjoy what you're doing. You enjoy the sport that you're working in. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. The guys that I worked with then, I still chat with. When I started in 2005 and we're already in 2020, those guys and I text every day. So it was just a good group of people to work with, and I enjoyed it. My second year in Johnstown, I moved over and also took on responsibility of game day operations. So game day operations, if you've ever been to any sporting event, but especially minor league sports, you'll see that they're doing everything they can to possibly entertain the crowd and keep people's enthusiasm up. And so I also took on the game day operations task. And it was, again, just another kind of feather in my cap. It was something I could add to my resume, and I had fun doing it. So after 2 years in Johnstown, I decided to get a little change of pace, and I moved to Florida, and I worked for another ECHL hockey team down in it was Fort Myers, Florida. It's called the Florida Everblades. And there, again, just took on the account executive roles. Being new to the area, this was a great way to get a lay of the land. This was a sort of fast-paced way to learn your way around the area, learn who the big companies are, because I had to set up shop for myself. Essentially, I didn't take over anybody's role. This was not a new position, but they had, I think, 2 other account executives, and they were just adding to their team and making it a 3-person account exec team. And so I was creating all my own leads and diving in, head first into learning a new area. So this was a great way to, get my bearings about the area. So after that, that year, I kind of had a foot out of the door. I was looking to do something else, and then I actually got my start in higher ed right after that, and I've been in higher education since then, working for colleges and universities throughout the country. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of my background, but my sporting background. I'll dive into a little bit of other stuff later, but I just wanted to share those experiences. But I wanted to kick it over to Brian and let Brian explain his experiences so far.
Thanks, Mark. Do we want to take it off the screen, or is it on you still? Or
I can do the stop share.
There we go. Let's see everybody. So I will run through things a little bit. Sorry. If anybody heard some dance music in the background, I apologize. That's my 8-year-old upstairs dancing. I was texting my wife feverishly to say, can you have him please turn that off? So if that happened for a second in there, I do apologize. So I started, and this made me sound really old as I was looking through Mark's background and story and when he got started. I started in the industry. Oh, you didn't hear any? Okay, Brian, you did not hear any dance music. Okay, good. I was a little freaked out because I'm in my podcast studio in my basement, but the floors are kind of thin. There's not enough insulation, and you could kind of hear the stomping and dancing. It's just a lifestyle with 3 kids. Anyway, so I started out, graduated college and started at CNN Sports Illustrated, which was a 24-hour sports news network set to compete with ESPN. And since I'm impressed that Mark was able to find the logo, you can kind of gather from that the network only lasted for about 8 years. I was actually there from the day it started until the day it ended. It was a kind of cool collaboration between CNN, one of the largest names in media, and Sports Illustrated, one of the largest names in sports. So it was a great place for me to start out and start my career. I learned a lot of the best practices of journalism and storytelling and editing and producing and all of those parts of the storytelling world of content creation. That's where I kind of was leaning into when I was in college. I knew that I wanted to get in the content side. I knew I wanted to be the storyteller. I wanted to watch games, tell game stories, cut up highlights, edit sound bites from organize stories, give reporters and anchors assignments and edit stuff. And that was just that's kind of how I approached it all. And I got hired right out of college. And one of the biggest questions that I get all the time in any of the career type sessions that I do is, well, how did you get that kind of a job right out of college? And I know I'm probably dovetailing a little bit into stuff we would talk about later, but I will tell you, it's understanding whatever you want to do, whatever field it is you want to get into, whatever part of the sports industry you want to work in, or whatever industry period, it's understanding what they need. It's understanding what is needed for the roles that you want to fill. For me at the time, the cutting edge technology was something called nonlinear editing, which is kind of funny because now we do that on our laptops. But back in the day, this was 1996. This was a big deal. This was the newest technology. And I learned that my senior year of college. So then when I was out applying for jobs and CNN Sports Illustrated was looking for somebody that had sports knowledge and nonlinear editing background, that's why I got hired. So part of the role for you right now, as you start to analyze yourself and where you want to be, is to understand what the marketplace needs, what's in demand for what you want to do. And that research is out there. It's very easy to go find job descriptions and figure out what you need. They tell you in the job description, this is what we want for this job. This is what we expect people to have. These are the skills we want them to know. So you have to kind of do a self-analysis and figure out, well, do you have the skills that are in demand? Just having a high GPA or just having some internships under your belt isn't going to really cut it. You need to figure out more specifically what is needed for the industry and how you can fill that role. That's how you're going to stand out. That's how and we can get into that in more detail later. So started out at CNN Sports Illustrated as a production assistant. I was working from 6 at night until 2 in the morning. My days off were like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It was awesome. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I had a crazy schedule. I was watching sports. I was cutting highlights. I was running and talking to the anchors before they went on the air. I mean, this is like the life. I'm literally sitting there and Magic Johnson walks in one day. And then the next day, Shaq comes in for an interview. And it was when he was like young and thin and like dominant. It was amazing. It was like this kid's playground, a sports fan's crazy playground. I mean, you imagine all the This Is Sports Center ads where it would be like the funny ads they used to make, and they do some of them now, but not as much, but they give you that kind of behind the scenes look. That's really what it's like. I mean, it is a crazy environment to be part of a sports newsroom, and I just loved it. So I advanced to an associate Yeah, associate producer after that, where I was working hand in hand with the producer of a show. So, and then I became a producer. So I'll back into that a little bit. As a producer, if I'm doing the 6 o'clock show, right, that means I have an hour-long show from 6 to 7. I have to fill that up with content. And that's my job for the day. And so you'd show up at 11 to get started for a 6 o'clock show. Yeah, so about 6 or 7 hours before a show to build it. So you have your commercial breaks, you have your packages, your feature stories are 2 or 3 minutes. You have your analysis segments, you have game highlights, you have news, you have sound bites, you have all these things, and you're putting them in place. You're making it move with rhythm. You're grouping things together. You're making sure you leave some stuff for later that you can tease going into a commercial break. You're making assignments to the anchors and reporters. You're writing. You're coming up with graphic ideas and research ideas and concepts and highlight packages and whatever it may be to make it as entertaining as possible. And I loved that. And so you build the show, and then at 6 o'clock when your show's happening, or 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, if you're doing for a West Coast show, once the show starts, you're in the control room. You're in that room with like 1,000 TVs and hundreds of buttons. And I liked that control. I liked that ability to be, talking to the anchor in their ear and giving them advice or dropping a story because we're getting to we're off time, because everything's timed out to the minute or the second. So I loved that environment. That worked for me. That fit my personality. I like the urgency. I like the breaking news style. I like just being able to make a show. Like it'd start my day and it would be empty, and then you'd have something at the end of the day that was so fantastic, like you would just be proud of. You'd have an end of day product that you knew millions of people were watching. The crazy thing is too, though, is that I'd be doing shows sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because again, that's 11 o'clock on the West Coast. We were based in Atlanta. So you do a show that's for 11 o'clock on the West Coast, and you do a show at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'd be hyped up. I mean, there's an adrenaline rush to be doing a live show. And so your schedule is completely different than the rest of your friends. I mean, I'd be doing a show at 2 o'clock in the morning. By the time the show ends, I'm like amped and ready to go, and it's 3:15 in the morning, but you've got all this adrenaline rush. So you have to kind of figure out how to deal with that. 24-hour gym was a good thing. A lot of late night hoops. Anyway, so then after that, I wanted to get into management a little bit more. So I got recruited to Fox Sports Northwest to be the news director, and coordinating producer, which meant essentially I was managing the reporters, the anchors, I was hiring staff and firing staff and producers and assignment desk editors and audio operators. And I had a staff of 35. And I'd have all the journalism decisions would kind of come through me. So I would kind of set people on their path and kind of set up the day and make sure we were covering things in the direction we wanted to, and make sure we put our resources in the right spots. We need this reporter out at Seahawks, we need this reporter out at Mariners, or whatever it may be, giving story ideas, coming up with that, and just also managing staff. I was there for about 5 years. But I got frustrated because they weren't moving in the direction I wanted to, which was towards more digital and streaming and social and everything. And they just were really slow to move in that direction. So I launched my own site, started my own thing, did my entrepreneurial little fix. And then that site was purchased by workinsports.com. And I've been there for the last 7 years. Excuse me, little hiccup. Happens every time I'm recording our podcast too. I'm talking so fast, I swear, like I have to take like a hiccup break. It's annoying. Anyway, I go off on tangents at times too, as you'll probably recognize. So 7 years ago, I joined Workin Sports. I've been more in the career development, professional development phase ever since, because I've been hiring and firing people for a long time. I interview people as part of our Workin Sports podcast. Like literally as I get off this, I am interviewing Stu Grimson, who played in the NHL for 11 years and is nicknamed the Grim Reaper, which I think is the best nickname in all of sports, because he was a fighter. And now he's the chief counsel. He's a lawyer. I mean, the guy went from being one of the greatest enforcers in hockey history, where he would just beat the crap out of somebody every night, and now he's a lawyer for a luxury home company. It's just hilarious to me. I love that contrast. So I'm interviewing him as soon as we get off of this call. So I do a lot of content in that regard still, but also do a lot of professional development stuff. And that is me in a nutshell.
Awesome. That's a really cool background. I think it's an interesting look into some of the components of your career that you've had. I think it's an interesting background so far.
I would say too, if you don't mind me interjecting really quick, Mark, you guys should take yourselves all off of mute. But there's 4 of you. That's fine. We can talk, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think, Mark? Let's let them interact. Like if you guys have questions, Yeah, conversation's better than like take yourself off of mute. Don't have to chat. If you have something you want to say, we can just say it. Don't you think, Mark? You
I
agree?
definitely
Sorry, I don't
agree.
mean to take over.
No worries. Um, I wanted to, so I definitely wanted to just share our backgrounds. Again, give all the folks on the call the idea, or have them see where we've been and what we've done. Because the next piece that I wanted to kind of look at was, how we got there. So the next slide I had up, I don't know if I necessarily even need to share it. I don't really want to go off of a PowerPoint the whole time, but it was more tips and tools, like how we got our foot in the door. And I know you sort of alluded to it in the beginning, to where somebody had maybe asked you, how did you get such a good job right out of the gate? So I'll let you go first, and just kind of
For
keep it
sure.
rolling. But how did you get the first one, and maybe how did the other ones fall in line?
Yeah, so I'll be really clear. I was a very confused college student. I started out as a biology and chemistry double major. I had this idea I was going to go pre-med. I did not have a sports focus. I was not sure who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. After my sophomore year, I remember just feeling utterly confused, and I ended up switching majors. My mother actually said to me, she's like, "You love sports. Figure that out. Like, just figure it out. Figure out something in there." And so that was my switch. I switched over to a more communications focus, television production focus. I started to identify that that's where my interests were. And again, I want to be really clear. It's a skills-based world. It was then, it is now. You have to come at this from the perspective of, how can I help a business? What do I do to make them better? They are not going to hire you because you know this person or you know that person. That doesn't hurt, but it's not the reason that they hire you. They are it's not because you want to have. I see this all the time. People do their LinkedIn profile and they say, I'm a whatever major and I want this, and I'm hoping I can take my skills of this to get that. And it's like, that's nice. That's what you want. Great to hear it. I'm a business owner. What are you going to do for me? Right? That's got to be the focus. How can you change things at my organization? What can you do to improve our situation? That's all I care about. Right? So for me personally, I think you need to have skills that match up with the marketplace. So how do you get those? How do you even know what's in demand? The exercise I tell people to do a lot is go to a site like ours, workinsports.com, or go to any job board. Find 10 to 15 jobs that interest you. It doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter anything. You're not applying to them. You're researching. Go to find 10 to 15 jobs, all right? And look at those job descriptions and start writing down keywords in there of what they're saying they want. They tell you the requirements of the job. They tell you, I want somebody with Photoshop experience or CMS or CRMs or Salesforce or this or that or whatever it is. We want somebody who can do audio editing, or we want somebody who can do, has leadership abilities or whatever. Write down all those things. All 10 or 15 jobs. Write down all these attributes. And then go into that next column and you say to yourself, do I have this skill? Or do I need to develop it? Do I have a way I can explain on my resume that I have leadership skills, or do I need to find that? So once you do that, that becomes your gap analysis. That becomes your understanding of where the marketplace is and where you are. Your objective after that is to fill the gap. Every decision you make after that, internships, volunteer opportunities, informational interviews, club leaderships, whatever, should fill in those gaps. Should get you to a point where by the time you're graduating and you're ready to really hit the workforce, you have the answers to all the questions. You know what the marketplace needs, and you've worked really hard to fill those gaps and make sure that you have all those skills that are in demand. And then once you see jobs out there, because you're doing this routinely, I mean, I seriously tell people to do this every 6 months. Like, the world changes, new technologies come out, new things are in demand. So do it now, start to get a baseline expectation, do it again in 6 months. And figure out if anything's changed or if things are still pretty much the same. They might be the same, or there might be new things that are highly in demand. And keep adjusting. That's strategy. When you set a strategy for yourself, it's not set it and forget it. You have to kind of keep coming back to it and understanding if your strategy still fits. So once you set that strategy for yourself and you understand what's in demand, well, now when you start applying for jobs, when you're ready to, You answered all those questions, right? You have those things that they need. So let's now turn this to the next thing. All right, let's flip the conversation around for a second. If I'm hiring, I'll give you a little background into how all this works. Okay, I'm the news director at Fox Sports Northwest. I have a position I need to hire for. Let's say it's a producer, right? I list out 10 to 15 skills that I need, and I give the HR department a basic job description. They take it, they refine it a little bit, but they know what I need for this role. Then they go out and they look through their database of resumes, and they go out and reach out to recruiters, and they reach out for this and reach out for that. And they come back to me with a list of 20 people who fit my requirements. My point in telling you all this is that if you don't have the qualifications for the job you want, I never even see you. I don't even know you exist. I am given the people that have the skills that match what I need. And whether you're the news director at Fox Sports Northwest, or you work at Nike, or you work at ESPN, or you work anywhere, there's an applicant tracking system that is doing a lot of the filtering for you. And it's looking for the skills you've identified that you need. It's looking for, hey, this person knows Photoshop and this and that and that, and you said you need all those things, so they're a good match. Go. See if call them on the phone and have your phone interviews. My point is, if you don't do the research beforehand, if you don't know what's in demand in the marketplace, you'll never get to somebody like me. I won't even see your resume. I won't see your cover letter. I won't see how many people you know. I won't get to look at your experience. I won't even know you exist. So make sure you're applying for jobs that fit your skill set, and make sure you are mastering the skill set that's in demand for the jobs you need. And that's how I ended up getting hired. And that's the very keep it simple format that works time and time again. Period.
I love the idea of grabbing the job descriptions and writing. I've seen that before, and I've talked to other students about that, is grabbing job descriptions and writing down the key components that you see from 10 or so. That's definitely a great practice to have, and to figure out maybe what you're missing as a student's looking for a job, to figure out what you're missing. I wanted to touch on some I guess tips and ways to get your resume sometimes in front of those people, because like you said, it's not always who you know. It's not maybe always getting your resume in front of somebody. You have to have those skills, but because it's worked for me in the past, I am a believer in the reaching out to people and trying to find little trying to find ways to get your maybe toe in the door to be able to get your resume in front of somebody like a hiring manager, similar to you, Brian. But I'm a proponent of using things like LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
And using it for what it's there for. It's there to network professionally. So I think about times I've been looking for jobs, and trying to find different avenues to go down, of me going to LinkedIn to find people that have contacts of, areas I want to get into. Like when I was looking to get my job at OSU, I didn't know anything about OSU. Actually, I was living in Florida at the time. And so I had to go and try to start researching and finding ways to connect the dots of, I know this person here, but they know somebody at OSU. I need them to bridge the gap for me and, get an introduction. So maybe that's a little bit more old school, but I know it worked. I can share a great story about how it did definitely work for me to get to OSU. But making those contacts and being personable and kind of being shameless. And that's the way I look at it. I'm not scared to shoot off an email, to shoot a message to somebody on LinkedIn. Another great thing that I think about is, we all have friends that work in different fields and different arenas, and reaching out to them if you're looking to make a career shift or looking to get a job in a different area. I think it's important to keep a good friend network, so that if somebody does have a job somewhere, or that friend might be able to connect you with somebody else, I think that's important to do too.
Yeah, I'll give you a power example of LinkedIn too, if you don't mind me stepping in there, Mark. So, because I'm also a huge advocate of using LinkedIn. I had a student contact me once. They were in their junior year, I think. And they said, I know my goal is to work I'd like to work for an NBA team in operations someday. That's what I'd like. And I said, great, here's your strategy. Go out to every single team in the G League, in the NBA G League, and try to connect with who's working in operations for those teams. And add a note when you try to connect with them and say something like, I'm a junior in college. I want to get to this point. I see that you're working in operations in the G League. Would love to just, ask you some questions here and there. And they said 17 people, I believe, responded positively to that. So they had 17 out of the 30 teams or whatever. And I might be off on the numbers, but it doesn't matter. They responded positively to that. I said, great, that's your workforce now. That's your network. You don't have to have 5,000 people. You need to have the right 17, right? And so I said, don't just come right out and ask for things. Start to build a relationship with them. Start to like their posts. Start to comment when they share things. Start to ask like an intelligent question or a follow-up. Start to build your reputation with them as somebody who's smart and interested and curious. Maybe if you see something about how they broke an attendance record with their team, send it to them and say, hey, I just saw this article about how successful you guys are doing. Awesome. Congratulations. Ask them an open-ended question here and there. Okay. So this person does that. They use that strategy. Now, networking in this attitude is not a short-term fix. It is not a just add water experience. It takes a bit of time. But if you put in the effort, 6 months or 8 months later, they saw a job opening with, I believe it was the Long Island Nets. And they reached out and they didn't just ask anybody for hey, can you guys get me a job here or whatever it was, because they don't really know you. But what they said was, they had a contact. One of the people they had connected with and started to build somewhat of a relationship with was with the Maine Red Claws, I think. And they reached out to that person and said, hey, I saw this job opening with the Long Island Nets. I'm not asking you to refer me, but do you just know anybody over there so I could send them my resume direct? Just if you know anybody. And the person responded, yeah, I know them for sure. I'll forward on your resume to them from me. And that's what got them in. So again, think of LinkedIn as somewhere you need to have an activity level, and you have to have the long-term focus, and you need to target the right people, and you need to have a relationship focus. You need to think about, how do I build a relationship with these people, not just start asking for things. I'm telling you, I have 15, 20 people a week that will connect with me on LinkedIn and just start dropping their entire life story on me. And it's like, no, let's start a little slower, right? So just try to start slow and build a relationship and have conversations and dialogues with people, and then try to have a focus on what your end goal is and see ways you can do that without asking too forwardly. It can work. It really does.
Brian, how do we connect?
We connected on LinkedIn, right?
Right, exactly.
So. I was like, oh gosh, don't get this wrong.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, that's my point. I connected with Brian. I reached out to Brian as I started getting into my role in career success here at OSU. And I was trying to find, my career communities are, sports, entertainment, marketing, advertising, and PR, but I know my background, and I felt like it was important to connect with somebody like Brian. And that's how we connected too. But you bring up some really awesome points, Brian. The one thing I wanted to share, as we talk about finding ways to network. Brian, can you see the screen right now? The Everblades website? Cool.
I see your screen.
So what I wanted to show was another way to reach out. And maybe this is thinking outside of the box a little bit, but if you are looking for working, the best way to start, I think, is minor league teams. So the ECHL, like I said, is the third rung of minor league teams, but most teams have a website. If you go to their website and you go to the team, typically this is how it's done, but I can go to the front office and I can find this guy's the VP of business operations. I can get his email and I can now shoot Chris an email and just open up this dialogue. So if it is on LinkedIn, that's unreal. That's a great place to start. But I could also, if you think outside the box a little bit, start going to the websites and, kind of hitting the pavement here and trying to connect with these folks. And again, I like Brian's approach to where it's not, I'm just going to email this guy, Chris, and ask him for a job. That's probably not the best approach, but going and opening up a dialogue just for sake of argument, because I did work for this team, but saying, hey, I'm interested in working in hockey. I have a long background in it, and go on and tell your story. or if it is like Brian had alluded to his story, basketball, and you share your story about basketball or football or baseball, whatever it is. But I think, using LinkedIn and even getting a little bit more hardcore and going right to a team's website and reaching out to these folks individually is a great platform and a great place to kind of get started.
Sure.
So that was the one thing that I pulled up. Again, it's really easy to do once you start looking at teams' websites. Even if it's not this guy, maybe if you feel like going to the VP is a little bit too fast and too much, you can go to somebody like a group sales guy. But again, this is just ideas of things that you can do to kind of get started. In addition to using things like LinkedIn and trying to find old friends or old classmates, I think that's another cool resource to get into.
Totally
but
agree.
That was Brian, can you talk about the Work in Sports website a little bit more and tell the
For sure.
our OSU folks what it means and how to use it?
For sure. So Work in Sports has been around since 1999, which is surprising in the .com world. Things kind of change quickly. Companies go under and aren't able to survive. But we're a small company. We're 11 people total, and that allows us to be extremely agile and change as the marketplace needs it. We are the leader in providing jobs for the sports industry. We would be pre-COVID, when things were a little bit more normal. We had about 25,000 active jobs on our sports job board. There's two different philosophies you'll see out there. Some of you may be familiar with the site Teamwork Online. They are, yes, they're one of our competitors, but we kind of come at it differently. They only have about 2,500 jobs on their job board. And the reason is they work differently. They only work with companies that are willing to pay them a fee to post the jobs. So then that throttles the market. You just don't get as many of the opportunities. You're only seeing from specific teams or organizations or leagues or whatever that are willing to pay them a fee. We decided to go about it a little bit differently. We wanted to get the entire job marketplace. So we have every job in the sports industry, and there's 25,000 of them. And there's so many organizations. I've been in sports for 20 years, and there's so many times I see companies, I'm like, wow, I've never heard of them before, but they're on our job board. That's kind of cool. So you see all the opportunities. And that's part of the benefit of what we do. Now, we've also got what I believe is one of the coolest technologies that we've launched in a long time is you see all these job boards and they have this power. They like, oh, sure, upload your resume, and the resume will sit in a database somewhere and nobody will ever be able to access it. There's no real value to it. You never hear from anybody. You go in thinking like, I'm going to post my resume and something great's going to happen, and then nothing ever happens, right? So we've changed that model. We looked at that and said, well, that's kind of broken. That doesn't really provide a value for anybody to just post a resume on their job board. So we developed really advanced matching technology. So here's how it works. You post your resume, and as the job seeker, you post your resume with us. We'll immediately parse your resume, figure out where your skill sets lie, and compare them to all the jobs that are in our database and give you back job matches. So of that 25,000 jobs, you can't sit there and go through all 25,000. Now, we've got a lot less now because of coronavirus. The job market is different, right? I think it's like 12 right now. But it still goes through all 12,000 to figure out where you fit, where your skills align. So it gives you a good starting point. But where it gets even more powerful is when an employer comes on and posts their job with us, the exact opposite happens. They post a job, and it goes through and finds all the resumes that are a match for their job and gives them the matches. So if you're a match for their job, they're getting alerted of your existence right away, immediately, and they can ping you. You'll know that you're a match because it happens in real time. They'll know you're a match for it, and they can ping you right there and say, hey, we saw you're a really good match for this job. Here, follow this link and apply because we think you'd be a great candidate. We've built this system to be more interactive. We want there to be a deeper connection, not just a list of jobs, not just a list of links of opportunities and information and research and all that. We want to be able to literally put the two pieces together. And that's been our whole goal. And that's where the employers are loving it. The employers are telling us that their hardest thing, they'll post a job and they'll get 1,000 people that apply for it, but only 10% of them are actually qualified. So what we're telling them is, if you do it with us, we're going to tell you the most qualified part. You don't have to go through 1,000 resumes and find out that 90% of them are waste your time. we're going to give you the cream of the crop right here, and you can be more efficient in your process, which again gets back to you guys making sure you have the right skills for the job that you're applying for, right? So you get noticed for those right reasons. So we're making the process more efficient, but also making it so you don't get lost in the pile. If you have the right skills, you can be noticed. In addition to that, on our site, we do have a lot of career advice columns. We have products that are online courses that teach you, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today, we have programs that are designed to really be targeted and focused on advancing in the sports industry. From networking, from resume building, from interviewing techniques. We have a lot of those skill sets that can be developed specific to the sports industry. And we're a site that is geared towards trying to help get people working in sports, get those qualified people that are passionate about the sports industry, that have learned the right skills, get them the opportunities. Let's make it happen. We want to see more people out there working. It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Let's put the best people out there.
Brian, how does it, for the students and graduates, how does it work for them to get set up? Like, are they able to apply for jobs right from your site, or what is that set up like?
Yep, it's super simple. It is a membership site, but we have a student deal that is extremely affordable. We have a student deal that is 6 months for $30, so $5 a month. I might be off on the numbers a little bit, but anyway, it's workinsports.com/students. We just did a whole big site revamp, and if that link is no longer working, we had some links that we're debugging a lot. But that way, you'll learn in the digital world that you're constantly updating, and then realizing that, oh, when I did that update, it blew out all this other stuff we had. So anyway, workinsports.com/students. If that link is not working, I can help you out personally. It's no problem. But when you are a member, you have full access to everything that we do and everything we have. And then you can apply right from there. So we're essentially connected to the jobs, wherever the jobs are posted from. We're connected to their applicant system. So you're able to apply or be redirected to their application system. So it all, again, I tried to mimic our site. I did this thought experiment one time. I'm like, all right, well, let's figure out how much time it takes to actually try to do this, what we're able to accomplish. And so I started to set up all these bookmarks. I started to set up all these pages. I started to do all this work to set up Google alerts and everything like that, so I'd know when jobs were posted. And it was like the most exhausting experience ever. It took me 40 hours just to be able to come even a fraction close to what we do. So it's literally, we work with 8,000 different employers. It's a service that makes your life and everything much more efficient.
I'm sorry. I got a few questions for you. I was kind of waiting for the right time to kind of hop in. You said a lot of good stuff, which I appreciate. I actually got a lot more out of this conversation than I was honestly expecting. So I come from a math background, but I used to be a former D1 athlete, played football and everything, and just kind of trying to find my transition kind of back into sports.
Yeah. And
would really love to have like a front office position, kind of really in the analytical field.
Yeah.
Because obviously, it's growing, but kind of a smaller niche market.
Yep.
And just what you were saying with the LinkedIn and kind of reaching out through those kind of ways. But just trying to find that, like that job description. And for me, it's been kind of hard just to find like specific jobs in the analytical field just because it is so new.
Yeah.
So I didn't know like a better route to maybe trying to find like a GA position, getting like kind of a graduate degree, getting more of a master's in statistics, which is obviously, help out in the analytical field. Yep. And still getting some of that front office experience with the college team, or just kind of going more of that minor league route, which you guys kind of mentioned.
I think it's a fantastic question. I think it's really interesting too, in that you have a math background, you have an athletics background, like you are literally the type of person organizations want to hire. So have that confidence for one. So are you specifically interested in football analytics or anything?
Yeah, football. I mean, just because, kind of added the intuition kind of behind the numbers, I think would,
right.
kind of add. But I mean, basketball, even I have one of my buddies, he plays baseball, and he's always like, that's where the field kind of started, but.
It is, but they're growing. I mean, like, It's amazing to see analytics grow and change over the last 10 years even. I mean, it's been around longer than that, but there's to see a change and develop in hockey, soccer, every league is using analytics to make themselves smarter in decision making. So I think two things for you. One, don't be you might also want to continue, at least consider as a way of getting into one of the greatest trends that we're starting to see in demand is business analytics. So you're seeing a lot of revenue optimization work. And I don't know if that's in your alley at all. I know you're talking player side analytics. Yeah. I want to talk about that too. But just keep that in the back of your mind, because every team I'm talking to now is saying, we want people that can help us be more efficient in our revenue spend, in our revenue creation and spend and optimization. So there could be a opportunity there as well. Okay. I will tell you, analytics right now is booming, which you wouldn't expect, but because coaches actually have the time to look at the data. They're not on game day every day, right? So I was talking to Ari Kaplan, who is one of the founders of like Baseball Analytics. He's one of our most recent podcasts, and he's a really interesting dude for one. He was saying that they are busier now than ever because the teams that they consult with and work with are like, all right, well, we don't have a game today, so we can actually talk and pour through this data. Like, we have a little more time to look at ways to be smarter about winning. Every single football team is starting to develop football analytics groups and teams. I'm thinking Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier are two. They're kind of early adopters in football analytics too. I know that they actually teach a course. It's Sports Management Worldwide, I think. Aaron Schatz teaches a course in football analytics, I'm pretty sure. But the player side analytics, I mean, I'm telling you, with your background in playing and, like you said, the intuition and the math side, I think you just need to start networking and reaching out to the right people. And I mean, as far as the skill set goes, it's SQL, it's R, it's Python.
Yep. And
if you know those, and you're kind of like somewhat knowledgeable in those areas, even if it's just one that you're really good at, that will. Those
I have some SQL. I have SQL experience, and it's just one of those things. Even like applied in the business analytics world, and obviously that's what they look for. And I always market my math degree as they teach you how to think, not what to think. So it's one of those things that always easy to pick up skills, because I'm always a self-motivated learner. And, I'm always here, researching and doing what I can there. But for me, it's just been difficult to find even information in the analytical world.
All right, let me think about who I know in football analytics too.
And that's
Hey, Noah.
Yes.
I was just for sake of argument here, as you guys were talking, I just real quick just jumped on LinkedIn. And I just did a quick search, right? So I just did football analytics, and like I was talking about before, maybe it's reaching out to a guy like Charlie, who's the coordinator for the Cardinals, and tell him, that me, I don't know, maybe this is just me and my like overall feelings, but I love to help people. I want to help people. If you would come to me and say, hey, how do I do this? I would do this with you, but I would want to help you. And if I was in Charlie's position, I would want to help you. So, and again, I'm sure Brian's experienced this, but sometimes people don't have the time or just aren't that kind of person. Yeah. But, the more chances you take, if you, shoot a message to 5 to 10 people like Charlie, maybe 2 people get back to you. Well, you only need one opportunity, right? You're only going to need one chance to get it. So I would start to just throw things in on LinkedIn, or take, like I did with that Everblades team, go to every team site and see see if they have somebody listed on their website that says they're, an analytics director or something like that.
Yeah. And when you hit the connect button, you'd actually have the ability to add a note, and you have 300 characters you can use in order to add a note. Oh, hey, look, Mark's connecting with him now. So you can add a note in here. And what I'd say is, be able to say in there, I'm a former college football player. I have a math degree. I'm interested in football analytics. Would love to connect with you and just learn a little bit more about how you got started.
Yep.
Something simple like that. And if I read that, like if I get somebody that reaches out to me that says, I see you're a sports producer or a news director, I really want to work in sports journalism, wanted to see if I could connect with you and ask you some questions, I am going to say yes every time. Now, not everybody will to you. Like to Mark's point, some people won't because they're just not that personality. But again, you don't need them all, and you don't take it personally if somebody doesn't respond to you. You only need a few that are going to say, yeah. But give them a little bit of understanding about you. Tell them, I have a math degree. Don't just say, like, I'm a big football fan. So is everybody else. No big deal, right? Give me something that tells me why I should connect with you. I have a math degree, right? I'm a former player, so I can marry those two things together, the knowledge and the intuition about the game. And I'd love to just know how you broke in. Start a conversation with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, LinkedIn, honestly, some of the tips you guys just let me know how much I could be utilizing that resource. And actually, I really appreciate a lot of the information that I've gotten out of this. And hearing how you pivoted from, being a bio and chemistry major and kind of getting into sports, it just made me chuckle a little bit inside. But it's definitely, one of those things I can
seriously just remember, and everybody needs to remember this, sports is just a big business. So no matter what degree you have, there are transferable skills. There are. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just another big business. There are needs for, if you're a math major, you can work in finance for a team. You work in analytics, business analytics. There's so many different things you can do. Mm-hmm. There's really a track back you can do for just about every major to work in sports.
Yep. Good, thank you.
What position did you play, Noah?
I play safety.
Do you miss hitting people?
A little bit. I realized I don't think my body can handle it right now, but I realized that I got a lot of frustrations out on the field during practice.
Also consider, just on a side note too, I mean, if you're at OSU, just consider seeing if you can volunteer. I'm sure they have an analytics department for their football team. That's a big business right there. Yeah. I'm sure they have a football analytics department. See if you can volunteer. See if you can just go shadow in their department. So you just be present and start to learn from them and make friends in the industry. And then what happens is you connect with all those people that you meet during that volunteer opportunity at OSU. You connect with all of them on LinkedIn. And then everybody that they know and they're connected to is now that much closer to you. Yep. So just start to branch out that way.
I'm just a proponent of being shameless. Just get your name out there as much as possible. Don't be shy. And connect as much as possible. So, I think hopefully we've given you a couple ideas and given you some direction on.
Oh yeah, you guys, been very helpful. Even just having the confidence to just go out and just do it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how I got to OSU. Like I said, I didn't know anybody here, and I found one of my connections who knew somebody at OSU, and the guy that I ended up connecting with, he was in Fisher. He works in the College of Business. And so, again, I didn't know him, but I just reached out to him to say, hey, I've been working in higher ed for X amount of years. I'd like to get up to OSU. And then, oddly enough, in some roundabout way, the girl who was the HR girl happened to be in his class, and she was doing her grad program. And so, I don't know, it was like a perfect storm, but the HR person was in the guy that I was reaching out to's class. And so it was just pure luck. I mean, but that's how it happens. And that's, that's the power of LinkedIn. So you just never know how it can work out. But I also like, if you get an email together and you look on a team's website and having those conversations and, kind of having a template to work off of, but then you could add in some little things about yourself or about that team that you might know. That can always be a good tool as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, personalize as best you can. Like you can have a template, but then try to make something that's citing, them or make it personal so it doesn't seem like a form letter. But yeah, you can definitely do that. I actually have to jump to another meeting, but I want to make sure everybody has, you can email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Clapp, B as in Brian, Clapp, CLAPP at workinsports.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can have any other ways that I can help anybody. I'm glad to do it. But I have to get to a podcast interview with Stu Grimson. So I don't want to keep him waiting, or he might punch me in the face. So
yes.
I got to be really careful here. So thank you, everybody.
All right. Guys, I'm going to stay on. Does anybody else have any questions?
Thanks, Mark.
Brian, thank you. Yeah, we'll catch up with you later. Does anybody else have any questions about some of this stuff? And I'll post my contact info and Brian's info before I jump off. But does anybody have anything else? Crickets? Okay.
No question. Just thanks for having this up. I know there's like a very small group, but it was nice to just listen to him talk about basically just like getting the process started. Yeah. And I mean, I know, it's a really weird time. Like a lot of the students and grads that I'm talking to now, it's just such a bizarre time. It's really tough to be looking. It's tough for teams to want to be hiring and try to figure out your next move. So the way I was thinking about it was sharing stories. And I felt like if Brian and I could just share our stories, and that's the easiest way to relate and try to, connect some of the dots. And so I figured if we could share our stories and talk about where we've been, and also his website and what they do, I think it's a phenomenal resource. But, I just think it's, just trying to give you guys examples and ways to make that next step in the transition into that next part of your career. So I've done it. So if you want any extra help, or if you want to dive into anything, a little bit more, I'll share, my information and Brian's here. But be more than happy to kind of give you some help or some guidance. We're doing appointments virtually. So I'm meeting with students and graduates pretty much on a daily basis. Obviously, we're not back to campus yet either. I don't know when that's going to be. Quite honestly, it's so weird. But we've just been doing Zoom calls or phone calls. And so we can always set those up through Handshake, or if you needed to set it up in a different way, we could do that. Brian is super great to get a hold of through email, or he'll do a chat call with you too. You could tell like he was sitting in like a studio. That's his podcast studio. So he has a podcast through the Work in Sports website. And he'll bring in some cool names. If you look at their website, you can go back to older podcasts and see if there's somebody in your field or what you wanted to get into, or your sport of choice. But he's kind of spread throughout. He's met up with everybody from different kind of sports, people who are old players like he's talking about today, or people in the front offices. So it's just a very kind of diverse background of people that he's worked with. So you can go on there and check some of those out. But if you guys need me, I'm pretty accessible through email or a phone call. So don't hesitate to reach out. Before we jump off, does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Are you able to hear me?
Sure. Yeah, you're good.
So I'll be graduating in December. When would you suggest to start actually applying to other locations? When's a good time to start?
Yeah. So it's interesting because you don't want to do it too early, but you don't want to be like too late. I would start after the semester gets started, starting to look. I mean, you should always be looking. I'm glad my boss was on the call too. So I'm glad he's not on anymore. But I'm always looking because that's just like the nature of the beast. Like you always have to be looking. My resume is ready to go at a moment's notice because you just never know when that unreal opportunity will present itself, or when you'll meet somebody and they're like, "Get me your resume today." So you just have to be ready. That's the way I approach it. Maybe it's a bad practice, but I'm just always ready. I think it's good, but my boss might not think it's always good. But I think once a semester gets started, you can start really trying to find jobs that are of interest to you. And then, applying closer to December is legitimate, because you can't expect to apply now. And quite honestly, nobody's going to have a job posted now for December, right? Like, that's just not realistic. So I would start keeping an eye on the market once we get into the semester. And then once we hit the halfway mark of the semester, I think once we get into like October, maybe November, then you're in a real striking zone, because those jobs are going to be available to you come December, January. Like, they're not going to be that far out. So I think being prepared now is good, and then updating your information as you see fit in between now and December. But I think October, November of really being that sweet spot of you applying, because it takes a little bit of time. I've applied for jobs in higher ed. Higher ed kind of has a bad knock on it of being slow and how they hire people. My first job in higher ed, I applied in, it took 3 months for me to get the job, basically. I applied in like March, like shortly after Easter, and I didn't get the job until July. And that was like a really, really rough time for me, because I was actually out of work at the time. I was thinking about my bills and how things were mounting. But eventually I got the job. And so that's higher ed. Higher ed has that bad knock on it. Sports, I don't think has that. I think they're pretty fast when it comes to it. They're not really one of those industries where they're waiting around like that. It doesn't stop. Like the industry doesn't stop and wait for somebody to get hired. It's continuing on. So I think, that's my kind of long-winded answer of maybe saying, just feel the market out as you get closer and closer to graduation. But what I would do is take this time now and capitalize on reaching out to teams that you're interested in and finding jobs that you are interested in. And like Brian had mentioned, start getting those job descriptions ready, and then figuring out how you can apply to those jobs, like your skills and how it applies to that job description. So take this time and use it wisely. Don't just say, well, I can't apply till October, November, and don't do anything till then. Be, like Brian also said, be present and start to be active.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else got anything before we jump off? Don't want to take up too much of your guys' time today. I know it was an hour-long call. It's kind of what I wanted, but again, my info's here. Feel free to reach out. Brian, his info's there. Reach out to him too. And if you need anything from us, from our department or our area, again, use us. This is what we're here for. This is our job. Don't ever feel like you're a burden. We're here to help out.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend. Get out, get some exercise, take a walk. All right, guys, be good. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
See you.
See you guys.